Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro Adventures. At the end of another week, and the end of another poll, we've got a very clear winner with the second part of the Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Death on the Reik. Now as usual, I'll cover that on the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other poll related stuff and some other channel related stuff. But a wee reminder, if you'd like to help the channel out, you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to become an honest to goodness fake Laird of Scotland, as well as many other options that we're slowly adding to our Patreon. It's linked in the description down below. You can see how you can help us out, because it would be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's move on and have a look at Death on the Reik. So, first of all, new desk. The old scratched one got too damaged and actually collapsed the other day. So, since Adam, my youngest son, who appears in some of the videos with me, has now left school and graduated, he doesn't need his homework desk anymore. So I stole that. This is Adam's old homework desk, which is nice and shiny because he probably never used it enough. But anyway, this time I would like to present this, Death on the Reik. Now this originally came out in 1987 from Games Workshop in a box set. But this is the Hogshead Publishing version from 1996, which compiles the books out of that box set in this single book. About halfway through, it switches from being the adventure to Life on the Rivers of the Empire, I think it's called, or something along those lines. And the map is included just within the folder, or within the cover. Now, this is the second part of the Enemy Within campaign, an absolutely iconic campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And although I don't like it as much as I like Shadows of Bögenhafen, I think the campaign started off particularly strong. This is perhaps a far more wide-reaching adventure, where the first part probably you would get through in a half dozen sessions. A few more, a few less, depending on how much you cover. But this can go on for months and months and months, because it is heavily based around the river, the Reik, the biggest trade river in the fantasy country of the Empire. And in this adventure, the players end up with a riverboat, so end up chugging up and down the river, trading away, earning money, and visiting different locations in it, which lead them further on in the campaign. Now, before I go anywhere else, I have to comment on the quality of this artwork. I absolutely love this cover. It's so gothic and dark and twisted. The beastmen with tattoos and their mutations. The castle itself melding into the rock face below. The twisted trees. This really gets across the chaos encroaching on the Empire. Absolutely lovely detailed picture. Absolutely adore it. Now, having a look at the back cover, Enemy Within Volume 2. There's a lot of text here, but the mighty river Reik, the longest waterway in the whole of the Old World, stretching almost 1,000 miles from its source in the Black Mountains to the sea at Marienburg. The Reik and its tributaries are the arteries of the Empire, flowing through the dark forests to link its great cities. As the river flows untroubled to the sea, strange things are moving in its forested banks, and somewhere along its upper reaches a great evil festers and grows. It has lain dormant for over a century, but now a prophecy is fulfilled, an unimaginable horror has awoken in the heart of Sigmar's realm, and the horror is spreading. The rot must be cut out before it is too late, but first it must be found. Death on the Reik can be played as a standalone adventure or as part of the Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, continuing from Shadows of Bögenhafen. A seemingly simple manhunt turns out to be far more complex and dangerous, and adventurers will be pitted against mutants, Skaven, and desperate cultists, before they discover the truth and a climax which will plunge them into the mist of chaos. As well as an extended campaign adventure with 20 pages of maps and player handouts, and a double-sided poster map, Death on the Reik features an appendix on the rivers of the Empire. New rules for river navigation and trading are included, plus full details on the riverboats of the Reik, and the people who use them. There are extensive outlines of possible hazards, incidents, encounters, plus a fully developed, ready-to-play scenario, the Maria Borgia. Now, this is one of the things which I remember most about this campaign, because before I bought it, I read a wonderful write-up of it on the old blog Critical Miss by Johnny Nexus. And he talked about how his players ended up chugging up and down the river, trading away like some kind of Renaissance Elite. The video game Elite, where you would trade between planets. And then the games master, to get them back on track, ended up burning their boat. And in response to this article, which was criticising the adventure a bit, James Wallace of Hogshead Publishing, the guy who ran the company, wrote an article for Critical Miss, where he said, "Of course I burnt your frickin' boat. I'll burn it again." They were doing all these things and not exploring all the other wonderful parts of the adventure. So no wonder your games master did it, because he had to get you back on track. It was a hilarious exchange between Johnny Nexus and James Wallace. James Wallace was always a very funny writer, but it was great to see this interaction between just a popular blog, which mentioned Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay once, and the guy who ran Hogshead Publishing. Now, I'll open it up first of all at the map, because that's going to be a big part. And we get a large-ish map of Castle von Wittgenstein, which is going to be the climax of the adventure. This is where a lot of the adventure is based, a description of this as a large, basically, dungeon to explore. But on the opposite side, we've got a massive big map of the Reik and all the cities along it. For the players are going to do a lot of travelling in this. Can I fold the map away nicely? Yes, I can. Now inside, the artwork is absolutely fantastic. I do like the intro here. Printed in Ann Arbor by Norton Gunn. Published at London at the Sign of the Hogshead, near to the Common Land at Clapham, 1996. It's written in very much Shakespearean type script, the way it's almost like an invitation for a play. Got a contents page here, the credits, so design Phil Gallagher, Jim Bramber and Graham Davis. Graham Davis, absolutely awesome writer. Revisions for Hogshead Edition, James Wallace. He added a bunch to it to streamline it a bit. But generally this adventure has gone pretty much unchanged from when it was published back then to the latest edition, which only came out a couple of years ago, because the Enemy Within campaign is just so iconic. You can't do too much changing. So we start off with writing up about Dagmar von Wittgenstein. I'm going to stumble over that name a lot. And their history, because that's what the climax of the adventure is all about. We talk about the adventure, so what's happening to them. They're leaving Bögenhafen and starting to travel. We've got pacing the adventure. We've got optional encounters, enter the hordes of chaos, how to start the adventure. And then we've got an encounter with the Cult of the Purple Hand, including their strange hand signals to indicate who they are. We've got a page of rumours and imperial events. Messing about on the river. So this is the encounter where the players get their boat. They encounter a bunch of beastmen who have taken over a boat, killed the crew, and the players get to take it over and start their trading careers. We've got the first play to Weissbruck. So various encounters here which lead them on. There's clues spread out through it which leads them towards climax. Off to see the wizard. So travelling by river as they continue. Various people. Hieronymus Blitzen, a human male 3rd level wizard. Hans-Peter Schiller, human male wizard apprentice. We've got a dwarven ring of protection. We've got them whether they're returning to Altdorf and leaving it. We've got the schemes of the Red Crown, a Zinch cult, and how they're doing it, in search of the Black Peaks. The dwarfs of Khazid Slumball, because there's a whole thing about revisiting a lost dwarven hold, which has been taken over by goblins, and fighting the goblins there. Up the Reik, so Castle Reikguard and the encounters there, hitchhikers, magical keys, signal towers, and the various encounters they can have there. Got the city of Kemperbad, again detailing arriving at the events there as they travel further along the river. Various NPCs. We've got the Barren Hills. Lots and lots of encounters which will be spread through just ordinary play as they carry on their trading careers. That's what the Johnny Nexus, James Wallace complaints were kind of about, that the actual exciting events which lead you through the adventure and onto the further parts of the campaign are just spread amongst general encounters as you are role-playing. Very much open world. We're going to attack by Skaven. And then, as everything leads in, we've got Castle Wittgenstein itself. Wittgendorf, the town around it. Various events as days go by. The timetable. We've got fixed locations. The room of records, the physician's house, all indicated on the maps. We've got an outlaw camp. Various mutants here. And then we're on to Castle Wittgenstein itself. An outlaw attack. Under the castle, dark entrance tunnels, area encounters. Very much a classic sort of dungeon where you are travelling between rooms, you've got random encounters, you've got set encounters. But in the very gritty format of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Carrying on through, lots and lots of room descriptions, descriptions of the creatures within, characters. Ludwig von Wittgenstein, human male mutant. He has become some kind of locust man, grasshopper. We've got a lesser demon of Slanesh. The servants of the Great Hall, who are all human mutants. Ufthdnar the Destroyer, a chaos warrior for the players to defeat. Mutant cats. Just all these weird encounters which set the tone for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's just so twisted compared to your standard Dungeons and Dragons. Mutant ogre torturer. Skaven warriors again. Leading up to the destruction of Castle Wittgenstein at the climax of the adventure. And we've got plot objectives, all the experience awards there. And then, as I said, we've got this section on the river life of the Empire. And this was a separate book. And it's for the Enemy Within campaign, but it's included here. And it details river life of the Empire, choosing encounters, enemy strength, river navigation, boat critical hits, so how to handle boat combat, river encounters, extended encounters, including the Maria Borgia, basically a short adventure, an extended encounter, however you want to phrase it. You've got various boat encounters as you travel. You might get attacked by pirates, there might be a showboat, there might be smugglers, etc., etc. Just so much to flesh out the travel between towns. Accidents, how you have to travel through locks, NPC encounters, trading rules. The river folk of the Empire, people who make their lives on it, pirates, fishing, and river patrols. You've got various river boats that you're likely to encounter. Gypsies, passenger boats, showboats, smugglers, trading boats. And then at the end, we're over onto the player handouts, which are very high standard, lovely stuff you can cut out. There's a few places on the internet you can get these updated, where they're not just black and white. They've been scanned in off newer versions of the adventure, where they're in full colour. You can also get these maps, which are now far more detailed online. Anyway, lots of handouts. Lots of maps and things for different encounters, the entry to under the castle, the dungeons, layouts of various towns that you're going to go into, so you can navigate your way around those. Lots of references for different characters you might encounter, so you've got their stats to hand, you don't have to go looking for them through the rulebook. Guard towers, wizard towers, small encounter areas. So many maps for the lots and lots of different things which can happen in this adventure. The Temple of Sigmar, Gazetteer of the Reikland, with all your people, different town settlement names. So we've got all the areas of the Reikland and all the town names, who they're allied with. Bögenhafen ones aren't actually allied to the Emperor, but we've got things like Carenberg here with the Grand Duke Leopold of Middenland, their sources of wealth, just lots of information about all these towns. Now, obviously, there are more up-to-date versions of this adventure, but as I said, they're not that much different. And updating between the various editions of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay aren't that different. The rules have changed slightly, but they remain fairly consistent. It's a fairly robust system. So using this in any version of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay shouldn't be a problem. Converting it to Dungeons & Dragons, obviously you're going to have to come up with your own stats. And without the old world setting, I think it strips away a lot from the adventure. But there's still a lot you could use in here. There's lots of encounters, the main adventure you could carry on. But I do think it is heavily based towards using in the Warhammer setting, and won't be that much use in other games. But as I said, lots of encounters, lots of random stuff, and if you want to start up a river trading, then there's areas of this book which are absolutely brilliant. So that was Death on the Reik. That's the second part of the Enemy Within campaign. And that won the poll this week on 31% of the vote, ahead of everything else, which came as a bit of a surprise because it's been in the poll a couple of times and it's failed to win. Behind it was Last Rites for Call of Cthulhu, which came in on 25%, The Perfect Warrior for the Street Fighter role-playing game on 17%, Slaughter Margin for Judge Dredd on 16%, and The Last Warhulk for Alternity on only 11%. Now, as usual, they're all cleared out of the poll, and we've got a fresh set for a retro RPG poll. So this time, going in it, we've got probably not from RA grade games. So Dungeons & Dragons, Shadowrun, etc. usually dominate these polls, so I've decided to avoid all of those. And we've got Chromebook 4 for Cyberpunk. We've got the Reformation Coalition Equipment Guide for Traveller the New Era. We've got the Black Furies Tribe Book for Werewolf the Apocalypse. The Darklands Sourcebook for the Lone Wolf role-playing game from Mongoose Publishing. And finally we've got the Fading Suns D20 from Holistic Design, from early in 2001 when everything was coming out D20 under the OGL, which seems fairly timely now. But we'll see how those do. On other channel-related stuff, well, I forgot to mention last week, but over on rpggamer.org I'm actually having a bit of a drive to use stuff that I created many years ago. I've talked on the channel before about running a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for kids at my local community centre, and I tried to put a particular Scottish tone on it, using monsters from Scottish mythology and folklore. So I created all those back at the time, and they've been sitting on my hard drive unused ever since, especially since the campaign fell apart and then COVID came along and the kids have now grown up and gone off to university and that. So these will never get used in that campaign. So I thought it might be a nice idea to put them up on my website. So I'm compiling those for the month of February because there happens to be 28. I looked in my folder and there happens to be 28 documents I've written about role-playing. Now some of them I've shared on other sites before, but I thought I would put them up live. So for the month of February, as well as my usual Star Wars updates that I always do on the site, I'm doing a Dungeons & Dragons Scottish folklore creature and an editorial where I talk about general role-playing and ideas in it, etc. So if you like to read those, you can go over to the site and check them out. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I've started to open up extra ranks in the Patreon with some extra offers. So if you're interested at all, perhaps you'd like to go over and check that out. I'll link that in the description down below as well. But apart from that, not much going on. We've had some chat about different rule systems on the Discord, but apart from that, it's been pretty quiet. But if you want to come over, you've got anything to add, you want to talk about anything, jump on. We're a friendly bunch. But anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough, as I usually do. So thank you very, very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.